Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Christian schools and their leadership. This podcast is hosted by two Christian school leaders. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the superintendent of Lutheran Neighborhood Schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And my name is Mike Sheeman, and I'm principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio. And today, Rob and I are going to talk a little bit about everybody's favorite topic, I am sure, angry parents. Now, even saying that, I don't want to start this thing off with like that negative vibe that, I didn't say parents first, I said angry first. So we're assuming, a whole foundation of what might be happening. But the reality is, we're at that point as we record this, we're a couple of months into a school year. And I always enjoy the honeymoon phase. You get these parents that, this year's going to be all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and it's going to be great. And then all of a sudden something happens. Or you get new parents who've come into your school and they have certain expectation. And then they're realizing that maybe your school is not what they initially thought. And you get to that point where, parents are going to kind of do one of two things. They're going to be coming and talking to you on a regular basis. Hey, we're struggling with this. Would you be able to help us out? Or can you guide us on this one? Our kids need help here or there. Or you've got the ones that are the Mentos and the Coke bottle with the lid on top. It's just bottling up and it is ready to explode. And as an administrator, it's almost that the principles, PLES, of how you deal with both are the same, yet you have to apply them in a different way depending on how people are coming at you. Rob and I have talked before about how Lutheran schools are really defined on the fact that we are relational. I mean, our relationship first and foremost with Jesus is the most important thing that guides and directs our relationships with others. And so we want to have a relationship with these parents. We talk about relationships. We talk about partnerships, right? We're here to partner with you in raising your child. It takes a village, and we want to be part of that village. And that all is fantastic, and that's exactly what it should be. But yet when it goes wrong, how we respond is incredibly important. And so I think Rob and I want to talk a little bit maybe about our experiences on how we've responded to those situations, maybe throw out a few ideas, but I too hope that this turns into a conversation at some point. Rob and I are all over the place, conferences, online presence, and that kind of stuff. So if you have a specific question or an idea or something that we're talking about today that strikes a chord, I would love for you to reach out and maybe we can have a further conversation.
Yeah, and along that same line, you're probably better at some of this than we are. And most people are better at a lot of this than I am. I firmly believe that. I have something to learn from just about everybody. So if you go, I'm really great at this, or I want to talk about a time this went really well, please come tell me. I'm only going to get better by hearing from people who are better, right? Okay, getting into our topic here. I think the first thing here is you can be proactive and prevent a lot of these things. And this one's tough because you won't know. It's not like a parent calls you and they're like, I was really mad, but then I read this email, so I'm deciding not to come in today. Like that doesn't happen. You don't hear about all the people that decided not to come into the office or not to request a meeting or not to call for some reason. But when we're talking about how we can be proactive with this, I think we need to think through, okay, if we make this decision, what happens on the back end for that? How do students respond to this? How do parents respond to this? If I send this email, how's it going to be read? If we schedule this event or cancel this thing or add this new whatever. I remember one of my first actions as principal when I got to Janesville. When you started a new school, you have a little bit of assumed capital. Everyone's really excited for the new principal to start, and you kind of get a freebie, however you want to use that. In my freebie, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to change the dress code. And let me tell you, if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't do it the way I did it. Because I didn't think, like, I talked to the teachers and what were our problems last year. Okay, what's a good compromise we can make here that fits within our values, that recognizes, whatever's going on. And we made it, and I sent it out. And the complaints I got were not ones that had ever crossed my mind. And I could have prevented a lot of that by, saying, okay, I'm planning on changing the dress code. Let me hear from XYZ people first. Let's test out, whatever it is, do a survey or something. And because I didn't do any of that work at the beginning, I now had to do more work at the end to clean it all up. Because that's the thing about some of the upset things we're going to deal with, some of these issues, some of them are just from a lack of communication, or maybe poor communication, or maybe not very polished communication. And that's something that you only learn you're bad at when people tell you you're bad at it. We all think we're great communicators. And then it takes people to go, I didn't think it came off that way, for us to go, oh, I'm not as good at this as I thought. And so that's I think the first piece of advice is so much of this can be prevented if we focus on the message we're sending and how we're sending that. Mike, what do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head about make sure people are heard. As you have things that you're considering, get a few trusted parents out there, or not even trust. I guess you don't want to create cliques in that way either, but more of a be present and just share with parents, hey, I'm floating this idea. What do you think? Now, what you're going to realize is that no matter what decision you make, you're going to have people that agree and people that don't agree with you. And the one thing you can never do, if you're in this job to be a 100% people pleaser, you're in the wrong job. People are going to be upset with you. They are going to disagree with your decisions. But if you're out there listening and getting the feel of the pulse, you're present as opposed to being locked in your office and giving that perception, which I know is not reality, but even the perception that you are in your four walls, just making decisions from above, not considering how they're going to impact others and declaring it to be this way, that perception is a tough one to overcome. So there's a lot of ways to be proactive, talking to people, being present, be out there at Carline. How's it going? Be among the parents at various opportunities, be in your church, obviously talking to people that are there. You can think about Nine Ways to Sunday, how your decision is going to be implemented, how it's going to impact other people, but you're not going to think of every single outcome. Like even a dress code one, Rob, that you just said. I think dress code is like tipping your toe in the piranha pool. But it's just a matter of, well, if we change the dress code, what does this mean financially for our parents? What are they going to have to go and buy? If you change it on a Friday and changing it for Monday, are you giving parents time to adjust to this whole thing? And then are you giving grace as it's implemented rather than saying we're going to be legalistic and we change the dress code? Yes, I know it was this before, but it's this today. So your kid has a detention immediately because they didn't, have a belt with wearing pants with a belt loop. It's giving that grace to say we're gonna do this together. Now, you are going to be able to decide how far does that grace extend before you've given enough notice and things are happening the way that you've intended, and you don't want grace to become cheap grace either. So there is going to be that line. But when parents, I think you should always be finding ways to hear from the parents and to try to anticipate where these things are going to creep up, because sometimes things blow up in your face. I'm guessing most of those times you could probably see it coming. You probably know what's happening. You probably had a sniff of it. A teacher has made a comment or a parent has made a comment, and you're going, I think there's more to that. Maybe you didn't explore it. Maybe you didn't ask the right questions. We're constantly learning. I still deal with difficult parents that walk in my office and tell me something I had no clue was happening. But that's happening less and less because it's a matter of being present. It's a matter of listening. It's a matter of soliciting that feedback and just being there with the parents.
Yeah, and things are going to go wrong. And after they go wrong, after you clean it up, after you write whatever it is, you need to look at, okay, could I have seen this coming? What were the signs? What did I miss? Because there's usually something. Usually. Not all the time. You are not going to make every parent happy. And sometimes parents are going to be upset about things that are objectively silly. And that's not often, but it does happen. There's a Lyndon Johnson quote from when he was president. He said, if one morning I walked on top of the water across the Potomac River, the headline that afternoon would read, President Can't Swim. And I think sometimes some of our decisions are that way. No matter what we do, there's going to be somebody out there who doesn't like it, whether that's changing the dress code, changing the lunch menu, whether even like down to teachers you hire, right? This is, if you are a single graded K-8 school, you have like one kindergarten, one first grade, one second grade, you are avoiding a problem that some of our larger schools have that you don't even think about. If you have two second grade classes, parents will come to you when their kid is in first grade and they'll say, I want this teacher. I don't want this other one. And you're like, no, they're all great. And they're like, no, I can't have my kid in that class. And some of them will go, it's just a preference. Some of them will pull the, we will leave if we don't get exactly what we want card. And there is a decision you need to make as a leader to go, okay, which are the decisions that I will never bend on? What decisions have some wiggle room? And what are decisions that are really not that important? And what we pick doesn't really matter because people will test that. And you will have to go, okay, sometimes you got to call somebody's bluff and you got to, I would hate to see you do that, but this is the decision and we're sticking with it.
Mhm.
And you might not always like the resolution of that, and you might not always see how far reaching that resolution will be. And it might just be that person was used to saying whatever they wanted in a heated moment, and they're not actually going to do it. But you're not going to know in that moment, and you still need to stick with your decision. And when parents come in, let's, I think, get into a few of the anecdotes we're going to talk about. If a parent comes in and they're upset about, let's pick a thing, whatever the thing is, what is your first step kind of as a leader? How do you handle that? Mike, I'm going to throw this to you. What do you do if a parent comes in, they're upset, you've already talked to them on the phone, you said, hey, this is not going to be a great conversation on the phone. Why don't you come in and we'll get this resolved? What's
Mhm.
next?
Good question. Well, I see this as a staged approach. Usually, when I have a parent coming at me and they're upset about something, um, my first thought is, have you spoken to the teacher about this? Because a lot of parents think if we go straight to the administrator, we can jump this teacher thing and they're going to tell the teacher how it is. But even before I get to that point with a parent, the one thing that they need to know is that I'm a safe space for them. And so there's times where, and this is maybe debatable if this is the right thing to do or not, but this is what I do. When a parent comes in, I let them tell me their issue. I don't just cut them off right away and say, go talk to the teacher. I let them tell me their issue. And then I right away say, I try to get on their side. And it's not, maybe side is the wrong word. I try to empathize with them to say, I am really sorry that you're facing that. And if they see that your walls have come down and you're willing to listen and you're even apologizing that they're going through it, you're not apologizing for anything specific beyond, I'm sorry that you're in that spot. Then I open the can. Have you had a chance to talk to the teacher about that? And if it's you know what, I haven't, or most of the time it's, yeah, I'm not even going to talk to the teacher because they're not going to do anything about it anyway. So we'll tell you what, if we haven't tried that, what I'd like you to do, and then I try to coach them a little bit. Go talk to the teacher, let them know that this is your concern. And here's a couple of things that you could even ask them to do about that situation. So why don't you go and try that? I think you're going to see that the teachers are willing to work with you on that. But if it doesn't work, why don't you come back and talk to me? And then I'll go with you to the teacher together. Now, 90% of the time that works for me. It really does. And they realize the teacher's going to work with them and they're going to be there for them. Now, I'm going to give you a situation where I had a parent and she was very upset that her kid got hit with one of those like rubber dodgeballs on the playground one day. The teacher clearly wasn't watching at recess because some kid threw a ball and it hit my kid in the head and I'm so upset. Well, that to me was kind of crazy because they're kids, they throw balls, it happens. The teacher saw the whole thing, but then this parent said, you're not running a safe school. Your school is not safe. And so it was, well, have you had a chance to talk to the teacher? But well, that's exactly her response. The teacher wouldn't even listen. And I said, well, you need to go talk to the teacher. Now, the other reason I listen is because in the background, I do go prep the teacher for the conversation. So and so is going to be coming to talk to you. This is what they're going to be talking about. You can be ready for that. So I think it's important that you're kind of coaching both sides, but I mean, you're on the teacher's side. So, anyways, this parent went and talked to the teacher, and it was a ridiculous conversation where the parent became quite unreasonable. You know, we shouldn't even have balls at recess. And yeah, she just went down a really bad place. So it ended up that this parent became one of those parents and kept coming with the pettiest little things. But then she started escalating it to school is not safe. Your school is not safe. And I'm like, I don't need this in the community. And I mean, she was just more of a loudmouth and people knew her for that. But she ended up came and met with me. And I had to say to the teacher, this is in my court now. You're welcome to come to these meetings. Let me handle this. And so the teacher came, but then the teacher was really um I don't know, the parent, every time the parent saw the teacher, it would get their blood boiling again. So it transitioned to, okay, I'm going to deal with this. But she kept on that mantra of your school isn't safe because my kid got hit with a ball in the head at recess. So one day that parent came in and she was just on the warpath and nothing else had happened. And we're trying to work with her and we did everything that we could do. So finally I went up to the parent and I said, you know what? I'm sorry, I have a question for you. I said, I'm a parent too. And if I was bringing my kid to an environment every day that I didn't feel was a safe environment, I don't know how I could live with myself. You're saying that our school isn't safe. Why do you keep bringing your kid here every single day? And she said, "You're absolutely right. I'm going to go." And she went and she got him right now, and they withdrew and left, and I never saw him again. Now, you do sometimes need to get to that point where if there is no healthy resolution, you may need to coach a parent to leave the school. Now, I've jumped from step one of meet with the teacher to coaching a parent out of the school at step 100. There's all those steps in between. But you do sometimes need to recognize if you have policies in place, if you have everything set to go, and a family is refusing to work with you, they're refusing to follow your policies, sometimes you might have to make that comment and say, I'm sorry, we're not the school for you. And that's okay. I already hear it from some of these schools that are going, yes, but we're desperate for enrollment. We're desperate for numbers. And I've been in those schools before, and it's like every kid matters because I take one out and that throws my budget way off base. But the reality is, if you keep that one kid, sometimes you're going to be impacting other families that are going to want to leave because they see you tolerating behavior that's not okay and it's not in line with what you stand for. You're going to lose three others if you don't lose that one. And in that one particular case, we sent the message that, you know what, we believe we're a safe school. You don't, so you can go. And when that one parent left, other parents were like, I don't know what caused her to leave, but we're glad she's gone. Like other parents saw it too. So that was kind of anecdotal that really went all across the board. But it's important to know when you can work with a parent. And it is also important to recognize when you may have hit the end of the road. I don't know. Rob, what do you think? That was a lot in a little bit.
No, that's all really helpful. That's all really good information. I'm going to touch on that hey, if you keep this one, you might lose 3 point for a moment. Your school will attract people that are like the people you already have because your biggest enrollment tool is word of mouth, and people hang out with people similar to them. And if somebody doesn't like another, like if there's a parent and they know another parent through some other thing outside of your school and they don't like that person, they're not going to say, hey, come over to my kid's school because they don't want them near their kid. It's not going to happen. So if you have parents that kind of bring some of that drama with them, for lack of a better term, the people they hang out with are probably used to that. And so for them, it's not a big deal. It's just something that happens. And those are the people you're going to attract to your building if that's what you allow and that's what you have. And so think about that. If right now it's like, oh, it's one parent and, you know, we can't lose this one. Well, what if it was 10 like that? And it was 10 like that because you kept this going for whatever reason. You need to decide who you are as a school and what your school is going to be and what it will tolerate and what it will not and what your mission is and what it's not. And that sometimes means talking to people and being like, hey, this sounds like this isn't a good fit for you. And there's no harm in that. Think about you as a leader, or if you're listening to this as a teacher. Have you ever done a job interview and been like, I can't see myself there? I'm sure you have, right? You don't just sign up anywhere. You have some kind of limitations on what you will and won't do, where you will and won't be. And I think we need to have the same as a school. So I think that's a really good point. I would sometimes pull a power move and I will print off a withdrawal form and I'll leave it on my desk in a folder and I'll open it up and I'll be like, it sounds like you're really unhappy. I want to make sure we can get a head start on this so your kid can get into a school that you will like better. Here's the withdrawal paperwork. You could fill this out before you leave. I've never had a parent take it from me. They always hand it back and they go, I'm not saying that. I'm like, great. Then let's figure out a resolution here. Right. That's I save that for very, very few occasions, but I've used it before. Okay. Parent comes in, they're upset. Yes, you've said, hey, you've listened to them. You figured out whether it's an issue for you as principal to deal with, or maybe it's an issue for a teacher to deal with, you know, figure out where that is. People are going to try and hand you monkeys, right? And you got to go, it's not my monkey. This is your monkey. You can take this back, right? So we've decided this is your monkey as the leader. You're going to deal with this one. And I would always thank people for coming in. Hey, I understand this is really important for you. I want to thank you for coming in to share this with me. If you don't mind, I'm going to pray before we start. Is that okay with you? And like, they're never going to say no. And so they are ready. They've been rehearsing this conversation in the car, and you've kind of broken their groove all of a sudden. And they're like, yeah, sure. And you pray and make it like a really slow. Think of like a late night radio DJ. You're going to be a very calming, quiet presence, and you're going to say some great things about them and their kid in the prayer. You're going to thank God for having them as a family in your school. And all of a sudden, the parent, they've lost a little bit of their script because they were ready, right? They had everything loaded up and they were going to unload on you. And now they're like, ah, okay. And then when you're done with that, you just say, I just want to say again, thank you for coming in. I know we're going to talk about this issue. Can you please, describe that to me? And you just let them go and you say nothing. Don't even take notes. I don't want you to write anything down. I want you to make eye contact, maybe nod, do nothing else. If there's something really, really impactful, you can go, oh, that's interesting. Can I write that down real quick? But don't take notes the whole time because then they'll accuse you of not listening. I've been there. Don't do that. And you might want to bring somebody else in with you to take notes, but the parent will feel outnumbered. So don't do that either. But if there's one thing, maybe write that down. And when the parent gets done talking, look at them, wait a minute, and then you go, is there anything else you'd like to add? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. They kind of tire themselves out every once in a while, right? And they'll go, no, I'm done. What do you think? And I want you to repeat some of it back to them. What I'm hearing you say is this, or it seems like this. It seems like you're really upset. And what I'm hearing is this. And here's the thing. You don't have to be right about what you thought you heard or what you thought they felt because they will correct you, right? And they're not going to feel like you weren't listening as long as you're close. Okay? So you throw that out there. That gets back and forth. And then, you will go into what you've probably been rehearsing as the leader. Because just like they were practicing in the car, you were practicing before the meeting. You were ready to go. And now you're going to jump into yours. And I want you to go slow. And I want you to keep a very calm voice. Like people should be listening to you like you're a meditation tape on the beach. That's kind of the voice I want you aiming for.
Without the seagulls.
Without the seagulls. unless your school's on the beach, and then congratulations, right? Good for you. Beach schools, lucky people.
Lucky.
And you're gonna go into your bit, and if a parent interrupts you, this is something I had to learn. I always wanted to be like, no, this is my time to talk. I gave you your time to talk. Just like let them interrupt you. Just like let them interrupt you. Be like, so what I heard you say was, repeat it back to them, and then you just jump right back into your thing. You're not going to get into like you're being rude, you're not being nice. Like that's not going to help you. You're going to want to say it. I want to say it. It doesn't help you. I'm sorry. It doesn't. We feel better about it. It's not good. So please try to avoid it. I've had to learn that lesson the hard way. That's still one I struggle with today even. So you go through all this, and then you tell the parent, well, here's the resolution we're going to have. And if they say, well, we can't do that, or, I don't like that, or whatever, one of the phrases that I have loved using and has been really, really helpful for me is, the parent throws out whatever their solution is. And if it's unreasonable, you just say, well, how are we supposed to do that here? And now you've made it their problem to solve all of a sudden. And if they don't know how you're supposed to do that here, all of a sudden they go, well, shouldn't you just do it? And you're like, well, how are we supposed to do that? I agree that like we have whatever, but how are we supposed to do that here? And in most of the conversations that I've had that have gone that way, the parent can get to the point where they will accept your resolution, but they might not like it. But they felt heard, they felt respected. They know you're not steamrolling them. You didn't just like lay an ultimatum across the table and be like, it's this or nothing, got out of my office. And so you have done a lot of work to get them to accept something they didn't like. And that's really what some of these decisions are. Because you as principal, as leader, have thought about what an acceptable solution is. And you're usually right. Every once in a while, I'll go through one of those conversations and a parent will suggest something and I hadn't thought about it. And I'll think about it for a minute. And I'll go, it's really interesting. I think we can do that. Right? And you can give them to that. It doesn't matter whether it was your idea or their idea. A good idea is a good idea. A good solution is a good solution, right? If you've resolved it in accordance with your mission and your values, great. I don't care who came up with it first. And so that's, again, just like yours earlier, Mike, that's a ton, I think, from beginning to end, but that's kind of my experience.
Mm-hmm. So, Rob, I think I want to do three things, if that's okay. So first off, I think first thing is I want to label this part one, because as we're talking, I'm seeing a lot of things we could continue on this conversation. Mm-hmm. That'd be the first thing. I think the second thing is I want to respond to one thing that you said, because you're spot on. You don't you're going to listen, you're going to hear a solution, you're going to maybe even have thought about it. One more point I want to make, though, is that there's going to be times when a parent comes in and they catch you off guard. You had no idea they were bringing that to you. Mm-hmm. You don't have a solution to it, or maybe you actually think what they're bringing to you is ridiculous, or maybe not. I would encourage you never to promise anything to an angry parent if you haven't had the chance to process it first.
Hmm.
We have a 24-hour rule here specifically when it comes to athletics. If you didn't like the amount of playtime that your kid got, if you thought the coach made a bad call, if you thought the ref was terrible, you can't talk to the coach for 24 hours till after that game had ended. And I tend to use that a little bit in my office as well. If a parent's coming at me, of course I'm going to listen, but it'll be like, I think I need a little time to think and pray about this. Can I get back to you tomorrow? Can we maybe meet again tomorrow? Like, don't leave them hanging. Don't say at some point I'll call you back, 6 years from now. It's a matter of give it 24 hours. Give yourself a chance to think about what they said so that you're not giving like an automatic knee-jerk response in that very moment. So I have a bunch of other notes that I'm thinking we could maybe discuss. But the third thing, I think probably for this one, because we're labeling it part one, let's do part two next week. Should we maybe just call this a spot to close it in a word of prayer?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, let's do that. Heavenly Father, Lord, you give us so many good gifts, and we truly are thankful for the people that you've placed in our midst, that cloud of witnesses that surrounds us. We thank you for our students, and we thank you for their parents and their families and all that make up the body of Christ in each one of the Christian schools throughout the world. Lord, we know that it's not always easy. You've created each person special and unique, and yet we're all loved. And so I pray that you would give us the ears to listen, the hearts to empathize, and the wisdom to know how to respond to parents so that we can continue in the partnership that you have designed as we seek to raise kids in the firm foundation with you at the core. We ask that you would bless any educators who are listening to this right now who might be on the cusp of a difficult conversation. We ask that you would bless them with the things that they need in order to continue a relationship. First with you, that they would look to you as the source of all good things, and then that they would be able to have that conversation with the people in their midst. We ask that you would continue to bless all who lead, all who learn, and all who serve. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.